Session of what we call Curiosity Talks. I'm Swati Divakar, a client engagement and learning consultant at Wisdom Circle, here with my colleagues Niharika, Bhavna, Mansi, and a few others. Let me give you a quick introduction about our company before we begin today's session. So, Wisdom Circle is a global platform that connects seasoned professionals with curated opportunities, advisory roles, and community and structured programs designed to unlock second career potential, serving as a trusted destination for those seeking meaningful engagement beyond traditional retirement. Curiosity Talks is an offering in a bouquet that Wisdom Circle brings to its members. It is my privilege to host speakers like Hester Spiegel and others who bring wisdom, knowledge, and information to all of you. Hester Spiegel transitioned from senior corporate leadership like PwC, and Deutsche Bank to become a successful entrepreneur and investor. As co founder of Epic Angels, she has guided dozens of founders through the early stages. She knows exactly what it takes to move from corporate to founder. Today, she's here to guide you through a 90-minute online masterclass on the Expert's Pivot Entrepreneurship as Your Second Act, designed specifically for experienced professionals who want to explore entrepreneurship in a thoughtful, low regret way. So, Hester, welcome to Curiosity Talks, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Swati, and thank you to the whole Wisdom Circle team for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. Lovely to see some familiar faces from Singapore, which is where I am, from the Netherlands, which is where I was born, and all across the world. Let's dive in, shall we? I will share my screen. Here we go. So welcome to the Experts Pivot Entrepreneurship as Your Second Act. This is a workshop for seasoned professionals like yourself on what it takes to turn decades of experience into a dream business. A little bit about me. I call myself an entrepreneur, an investor, and a speaker. And I'm going to explain myself in numbers, if you don't mind. So, 4 countries. I was born in the Netherlands, as you can probably hear. I haven't been in the Netherlands for 14 years, at least not living, but the accent will never go. I moved to London for 6 years, and then Germany, and now since 5.5 years in Singapore, where I moved in the middle of COVID. The next number is 3. 3 reinventions I've done. So when we go in a little bit my background. So as Swati already said, my background is in corporate. I started my career in PricewaterhouseCoopers in the M&A team, then moved on to Deutsche Bank, where I stayed 9 years. And with Deutsche Bank, I moved to London and Frankfurt. And then I made that leap into entrepreneurship, which was 7 years ago, and set up 2 campuses of School 42 or 42, which is a French concept, a very revolutionary education system where there's no teachers, it's all peer-to-peer learning, there's no degrees, there's no tuition, so it's accessible for everybody. It is a coding school, but the way that education is shaped there is quite modern, and I truly believe that's the future of learning. So for this concept, to bring this to Germany, I quit my job at Deutsche Bank and I gave myself a year and I said, if that doesn't work, I will find my way back. I'm a director at Deutsche Bank, I will find my way back if I need to. And luckily I didn't need to. What I found in that year, my first entrepreneurial journey, that gave me so much pleasure and energy that I never wanted to go back to corporate. Just the energy and the things that you can do if you don't spend it in internal politics for corporate, that was truly eye-opening. So for me, it was clear after that I would never go back to corporate. At the same time, I found the funds for my schools. My husband got a job here in Singapore, and we ended up moving to Singapore 8 months later, where I set up Epic Angels. Epic Angels is it's a venture that's built to grow, so scalable business. What we do is we run a network for women to become confident angel investors. And this is the link to the early stage startups that Swati mentioned. I see around 100 startups a month. So I know a little bit what works when it comes to business models, go-to-market, hiring teams, etc. Epic Angels is still very much alive. And in parallel, I started the Leap Studio, which is exactly what we're going to talk about today, how for seasoned professionals they make that transition into entrepreneurship. Not as a leap, it is a leap, it feels as a leap, but it can be a guided transition. To get into the entrepreneurial mindset, I wrote a book, Thinking Big and Small, which is available on Amazon, or if you ping me, I'll send you a PDF. That's all good. So those are the three reinventions that I'm on. I got two portfolio humans. So these are the little boys. They're 11 and 9, and 40 portfolio startups, as I've invested now in over 40 startups. Here you can connect on LinkedIn to stay close. So I would love to get to know you. What describes you best? Where are you at? Are you already launched with a business and revenue generating? Then put a 1 in the chat. Are you already launched with a business but pre-revenue, so very early stage? Are you an aspiring entrepreneur with an idea, or aspiring entrepreneur without an idea, or employed with a boss? There's combinations possible, right? So maybe you're employed with a boss, but are an aspiring entrepreneur with an idea, just to give an example. Okay. So some have already launched, some revenue generating, some are. Okay, so it's actually quite a good mix. Thank you for sharing that. If anything comes up, just feel free to interrupt. At the end, we have some time for questions. So let's start with what is happening in the world. So I don't know about you, but when I grew up with a very simple idea. You go to school, you get educated with a one-size-fits-all curriculum. Then you get a good job that will serve you for life if you did well in school. And after that job that served you for life, you are rewarded with retirement, which is basically withdrawal from work as well as society. Now that social contract does no longer work. Our education is very personalized. Thanks to online learning and also AI, the classroom size has shrunk to 1. Our careers, our portfolio careers, we can pursue different opportunities at the same time. It is no longer that we work for one boss for 30 years. And when in old age, and that is very much aligned with what WisdomCircle is doing, right? So we live longer thanks to AI, and these are a lot of pitch decks that I see with Epic Angels, are about how AI can help us live longer. With the biomarkers, for example, and the huge databases, you get very personalized advice on what to do, for example, with your protein and how your hormones are, all these things. That helps us live longer. But what do we do with all these years? Let's say we live healthy until the age of 80, 100, maybe 120. Do we simply work longer? That's what Goldman Sachs says. But that's not true, right? There's also a theory that the shorter the window of our life gets, the more meaningful work we want to do. Also, we are actually still very able to contribute to society. So this last part, that is where it gets interesting. But there's also a bit of a friction. Sorry. Yep. So we see this paradigm shift, right? From old to new. So it was standardization. Everybody was going through the same approach, very much based on how society was 150 years ago in the industrial revolution stage, right? That has gone to personalization. We are so used to personalization and getting things right here, right now. Linear paths, as I just described, have become non-linear journeys. You can switch and you can try new things and you can start again. So the 3 reinventions that I have experienced, maybe you also have experienced or started in an entirely different industry. External validation, right? So meeting others' expectations when it comes to your teacher or your boss is really shifting to internal alignment, your personal values and what you want to contribute to society with purpose. Security driven, get a good degree, have a career, have retirement, to meaning driven. What do I actually contribute to society? And institution led, schools, large corporations, to individual led. What do you want? So these are changes that we see going on in life, and it is across all generations. So self-actualization is not a luxury outcome of success, right? It is becoming the organizing principle of how people now design learning, work, and life. But there's a mismatch, because if we look at the two axes, feeling of relevance and time, and on the axis of time, we put school time, career time, and retirement time. Our feeling of relevance goes up. When you go to school, you're not that relevant yet because you're still learning a lot. And then you go into your career. In your career, you're at the top of your relevance. And then it goes down, right? You are no longer considered relevant for society. It's like you're playing in an orchestra, and then in the middle you get tapped on the back and said, thank you, that was it. You can leave the stage. Whereas the music keeps playing. And actually the concert is extended by decades. But you feel that you can still contribute. Yeah, so the more experienced you become, the less space there is to use that experience. Isn't that strange? So your role may change, but your purpose has not expired. So let's make sure that we find ways to have that feeling of relevance go up instead of go down, the more wisdom and the more knowledge we acquire. Now let's take a moment. I hope you have pen and paper somewhere, or you can also put it in your phone. What does self-actualization look like for you? So you can tick the box if you can answer with yes. If you're like, I'm getting there, you can also tick the box half, and no is no. For every yes, it's 1. For getting there, it's half. And no is no. So count your points. So what is your score? I would love to hear it. You can put it in the chat. Yes to all. I love it. 5, 3, 5. Again, very mixed. Yep, so some are there. Some are... Good. All right. Thank you. So self-actualization is when who you are and what you value and how you live are increasingly the same thing. Now, entrepreneurship, the topic of today, is first of all a pure form of self-actualization. It is hard to set up a venture that is not really anchored in who you are. When we talk about your essence, your experience, your expertise, it's usually a combination of these three, and it comes out in the venture that you set up. Secondly, entrepreneurship leverages your experience to that point of the mismatch. When you bring your expertise to society and make that a commercially viable business, so that is sustainable, right? Because it has a market, that actually then contributes. So that very well speaks to that new social contract where going to school, have a lifelong job, and then retiring, that is aging, that is no longer the case, right? And entrepreneurship, purpose-driven entrepreneurship could be parts of that new social contract. Now, entrepreneurship may sound a bit woo. So what do you think when you hear entrepreneurship? The first word that comes to mind when you think of this. Can be good, can be bad, just pop it out like popcorn. You can say it or again, put it in the chat. Building, do something you love, courage. Yeah. Means to an end, leader, scary, risk. Yep. Mix of all of this. Working, yes. But we're also working on your own terms. I love that. So working 24/7 and working on your own terms. Yeah. Challenging, helping others. I love that. That's a big mix. So when I talk to people, this is what I hear. Risky. That is by far the most heard word that I get. It's so risky. For 20 and 30-year-old, people have this idea it's for people in a hoodie who work in a garage and eat cup noodles all day, right? You need lots of energy. Has to do with all that working that somebody here said too. I don't know where to start. People say, yeah, and poor people. That's like you don't earn a lot. That's also an association that people have. Or when you're venture backed, that you get diluted by investors so much that you end up with very little in the end. So this is what others said. So today, really exploring entrepreneurship as a second act. It's a workshop for you, what it takes to turn the decades of experience into a viable business, right? And our goal is for you to walk away with a clear and grounded sense of what makes sense for you and what to explore next on this entrepreneurial path, or maybe not, right? So this is all about clarity. Good. Let's dive in. So entrepreneurship is also for experienced professionals. We're turning experience, expertise, capabilities, and your personal values into value, right? Creating value while staying relevant and purposefully engaged. So this may be the right time. Let's see who already did it before you. Where some people say, oh, entrepreneurship is for young people, they probably think like startup, but it doesn't necessarily has to be a startup. There's all different forms possible. So let's have a look at some of the older entrepreneurs that we all probably know. Does anybody know who's this? You can just call it out. Vera Wang, exactly. At the age of 40, she started her business. She's a fashion designer, right? So she started in bridal dresses. Next, who's this? See what he holds in his hand. Edison, exactly. Pretty right. Thomas Edison from General Electric, 45 when he started General Electric. Who's it? This is a hard one from America. You can see the logo on the background. That gives it away. No? Starbucks, yes. Gordon Bowler from Starbucks. He was 51 when he started Starbucks. And who's this? This looks like an old picture. It actually was early 1900s when this company was built. No, not KFC, Tesla, Ford. No, IBM, Charles Flint. And the last one, who's this? A bit more recent, the oldest of the set. Yes, Ariana Huffington from Huffington Post and Thrive, exactly from Thrive Global, which she sold successfully. So look at this. And there's actually also research that shows that the most successful entrepreneurs are 40 years and older. So you're right on time. Now, what is different than before, right? So all these entrepreneurs actually took real great leaps because the times were very different. There was no AI to learn fast. Culturally, it was very different. We were still in that old social contract, right? So what we have now, all the things that are actually advantages for us, right? As we start entrepreneurship with low barriers to enter. I already said it, with the help of AI, it's very easy to test our market and to reach very large sets of people. Longevity of contribution, right? We already said it. We live longer. So that means that we can also stay in contribution longer. So whatever we build, we are able to build that for longer and to build this really sustainable business. And in the end, have that financial freedom, right? If everything goes well, you can build this for another 20 or 30 years and have that financial freedom at the end. And cultural permission to pivot, right? As we just saw, there's more and more people, 40, 50, 60-year-old, who actually start their business. So when you say I start for my own, that should not feel too icky anymore because there's more and more people who are doing this. Yeah, so now may be the right time. Another thing that you have for you versus people who are actually 20 and 30, you have judgment on the uncertainty, right? So you've all had jobs where you had to make difficult decisions. You had to base it on intuition and very ambiguous situations probably where you still had to move through. So that judgment is very well developed. Credibility and trust, right? Because of your track record. Network density, you probably know a lot of people, a lot more than when you were 20 or 30. Strategic thinking, emotional regulation. Hopefully you have learned to, respond in different ways in different situations. And very importantly, pattern recognition. Also, when you are, for example, getting people around you in your team, you will very well be able to hire people that are probably a good choice than when you would have been younger. So probably now is the right time. But Dennis, how to start strong? That is the big question. I hope you all believe that this is actually a viable path. But what is required? Let's see it as a design transition, right? And not as a leap of faith. Now, what do we need to know? Four entrepreneurial paths. How can you actually get started? You don't, as I said, it's not all like venture backable and high scalable business. Consultancies, solo practices, franchises, that is all entrepreneurship and it's very viable. Common challenges to overcome. We will talk about these. Starting successful. What are 5 ingredients that are very important at the early stages? My career pivoting pains, always fun to learn and to laugh about somebody else's jokes. I'll happily share them because I can tell you my first venture I ran like a corporate because that's all I knew. Cost me a lot of time and money. So you can learn from that. And a 6-day action plan. So what can you actually start doing now? So the 4 entrepreneurial paths, roughly speaking, there's 4 that are the main ones, right? So small business, that is what everybody knows. Like your hairdresser is a small business. It is a known product. Cutting your hair is a service that is known in an existing market, right? Everybody has hair, or a cake shop, or a yoga studio. So it's only a matter of price and volume. Easy path to profitability, right? Once you get that right. Franchise or search fund. This is actually quite interesting. So this is a franchise. You can buy like an operation or a brand, right? So franchise is what I did with the French schools, 42. That was a curriculum that was created in Paris, so in France. So that is where the IP sits. And I bought a license to bring it to Germany and set up 2 schools with that. So the brand was there, the IP was there, but I created a whole new market by bringing these schools to Germany. So if you want to start something of your own, but you're like, I don't have an idea, franchise could be an idea. There's a whole database of patents that are expired, which are actually still valuable as such. You could take them over and create a new market around it. Search fund is something that has come up in the last, few years, I would say. It's an interesting model. It's basically the PE model for one person. So how it works, the aspiring entrepreneur, so let's say you in this case, has no idea, but wants to grow and sell a business. So you go out to find a business that is highly profitable. You get funded by a search fund to do your search to find a profitable business. Typically, these are B2B businesses and very boring. So they have to do with like sewage systems and things like that. So it's nothing really sexy, but it is profitable and solid. You buy it again with the help of the search fund, then you grow it for a number of years, and then you sell it with a profit. People become millionaires in a couple of years like this. If you're looking for purpose, this is not it, right? This has nothing to do with purpose, the businesses that are built. This is just to make a profit from the differential as you are growing the business to become more profitable. But again, you don't have to make the IP, you just create or enhance the market. A practice is very much for people who have deep expertise. So monetizing your expertise as a solopreneur and creating a market. So for example, I'm working with a lady who was CFO for a large corporate, multinational. She was CFO for Asia, her whole layer got restructured, and there she was, like mid-40s, had children, loved finance, loved to work, and said, okay, maybe I start something for myself. So her track record and her credibility was what people would buy, right? So it's a practice that is built around her because people buy her and her expertise and her experience, and she has a support system around it. So different model, again, highly profitable, right? Because there's not so much cost. Also scalable is limited. And then the startup where IP and market is entirely new, right? So this is by far the most risky path. So for example, Grab or a Property Guru, those started, sorry, these are Singaporean examples, but like Uber, right? For those in Europe and elsewhere. Those are real startups. They created new IP and created a whole new market. And sometimes, yeah, that means they have to break something like how Uber broke the whole taxi licensing system, right? So different paths. Now, you heard me talk a little bit about risk, maybe, right? So small business, not so much risk. It's just a matter of finding the right price point and then increasing volume to maximize your profit. Startup, high risk, because you have to make the IP work and you have to make the market work and then make that fit and then grow and scale it. So that's super hard. So the chances of that working are low. However, if it works, there's a good upside. So let's go to the test. I know some of you have done the Trailblazer test score, which is basically your risk assessment. Do you remember what your score was? You don't have to say it out loud. But this is how you all scored. So it was filled in by about 80 people. The range was 87% and to 26%. So the lowest was 26%, 87%. So that means like the risk appetite, right? So high versus low, and the average 64%. So if you're above 64%, you have relatively high risk appetite. If you're below that, you're on the lower end. Now, what does that mean? If we look at these entrepreneurial paths, these are probably the ones that would suit you best, right? Small business, it's a pirate and a navy, right? As you may have figured, navy, low risk, just follow the rules. Franchise or search fund can be both, right? But it's more navy, I would say, than a pirate, although it can be quite revolutionary, like these schools, right? I quite had to break open the German market. More pirate if the search fund, because it's a matter of just growing the business. Practice, again, depends on what you do. And startup, definitely for pirates with a high risk appetite. So, do you have any questions on the paths? Then you can scan this. I realized that the link was not working earlier today. That is fixed. So you can scan this and then you see more information about these 4 entrepreneurial paths. Also the capital that is needed, for example, and the path to profitability, a little bit more characteristics. That can be helpful as you are finding your way in entrepreneurship. Good, let's move on. Secondly, common challenges to overcome when starting on the entrepreneurial journey. Mindset and expectations. I speak a lot with people who actually think, oh, I'm just going to do this. And they know that how they did it in corporate is actually it's going to work. That's what I did when I started my own venture. It's like, oh, it works like this and that. And it doesn't, right? So the mindset, how you are able to think big and dream big and still execute every day, the nitty gritty things that nobody is going to compliment you about, but is so important to really make that progress. Loneliness. On one hand, and I saw that in the chat, some of you said indeed the freedom of time and the freedom of relationships is, and I feel that too, is definitely a very big advantage of entrepreneurship. It's up to you, right? That boss that was always annoying you or really sucked your energy away during the day, you can choose who you want to work with. That's great. And also you may find yourself sitting in your room alone, working on your business, and you actually don't know whether to choose A or B, and there's nobody there to talk to. That is real. Loneliness is real in entrepreneurship. Selling you. When you have worked in Google, for example, it's easy. Oh, I work for Google and I do this and that. Okay, people know what you're talking about. But especially when you are like in the startup or you're creating your own IP, going out and talking about what you do and what you have created and why that is so valuable, that may start to feel a bit like, ooh. And then lastly, the chaos, right? Where in corporate you have back-to-back meetings, you have your holiday allowance, it is all set. Suddenly you are the boss entirely of your own agenda. You can choose whether you sprint or whether you actually procrastinate in a day. It is all up to you. Sometimes I look at my calendar and I'm like, what a chaos, right? So all the left and right, it's sometimes a little bit like mental gym. So finding that structure is a challenge. The other day, here's a picture. This maybe you know him, Jason Kalanakis. He's from the This Week in Startups from a podcast, really cool podcast. He was in Singapore, so I briefly met him. That was just pure coincidence. But he clearly said entrepreneurship is very hard, and only 5% of founders is cut out for the task. Now, what he said was more towards startups, right? So not much to, I would say, like the small business type. But still, it is true. Entrepreneurship is hard. It is not easy. So don't give yourself false ideas in that. But also for that reason, this entrepreneurship pathway, which we'll also talk about a bit in the end, for pivoting professionals is really made for this, right? So really step by step going, really exploring, is this something for me? And if yes, which path would suit me best to shaping it? What is my idea to really going from idea to launch ready and then accelerating it and connecting with others and supported by a group of partners, right, that are there to help you with financial modeling. If finance is just not your background, developers to build an app if tech is coming in, or help you build with AI, because if you don't do it, others will. Incorporation and visas, accountants, personal coach, and functional domain experts, right? So there's this whole curated platform of partners available to the people who are on this pathway, just to make it a little bit easier. Next topic, the 5 ingredients to start successful. What are they? Again, mindset, number 1. Create entrepreneurial mindset. It is a muscle that can be trained. Different world, different logic. Corporate logic versus entrepreneurial logic. Let's have a look. What is different? And again, get your pen and paper ready, because at the end of this, I'm going to ask you which one is hardest, do you believe, do you expect, and which one you think, okay, I can do this. So corporate logic, progression, right? So there's a ladder. It's very clear in corporate how you get ahead. It has names, first of all. So you come in as an associate, for example, and then you grow up to VP and partner in the end. So it all has names. It has a salary band and it has a span of control. Very plannable, and you probably know exactly what to do to make it to the next ladder. Whereas in entrepreneurship, it is all about creation. You have to create it. You have to find out the next step. Nobody is giving that to you. Knowing, right? So knowledge is in books. That is very much corporate knowledge, logic. So what you know can be learned. It is already written and you can learn it and you can get good at it. Whereas in entrepreneurial logic, it is all about learning, right? The truth is on the streets. You may think it's a great idea, but if there's no customers, then it is not a good idea, right? So it doesn't matter what is said in the books. The truth is on the street, and learning is a key skill. Title, of course, your business card. I also felt it, when I was at Deutsche Bank, people said, oh, director at Deutsche Bank, they know in which box to put you. And then suddenly I was setting up these schools, which to me was so much more meaningful, right? Giving access to young people to very high level education, allowing them to have a career. But nobody had any idea what this was about. So it was a bit a silly idea when they heard I quit my job at Deutsche. They said, no, this is outright a stupid idea, actually. Right? So really title doesn't matter, but only action. Right? The proposition, the value that you bring to the market with your solution. It's not about title, it's all about the action. Role clarity, again, so I'm whatever you are in the company, that is all clear, whereas in entrepreneurship, it's all about problem clarity, knowing who you do it for, what problem they have, and how you solve that problem. So really going deep into the customer's needs and priorities. Permission, right, has everything to do with these meeting expectations from your teacher, from your boss. That's very much corporate logic, whereas in entrepreneurial logic, it's about agency, right? So it's up to you and overcoming those valid excuses to quit, which we just mentioned. Security, if you get a good degree, you get a good job, that logic, versus opportunity. Also has a lot to do with, maybe the gods of time very shortly. So Chronos, right, is the perpetual time. So winter goes into spring, goes into summer, goes into fall. Every day has 24 hours, and that goes on and on and on. So time is linear, and that gives us security. Your contract with your company is for 40 hours a week or whatever, right? It is all the same type of time, and it gives a certain security. Whereas in entrepreneurship, it is about opportunity. It is the qualitative aspect of time, right? So this is the god of the Kairos. Maybe you know him, he has wings because he comes by and then he disappears quickly again. And he has a lock of hair on his forehead. So you can grab Kairos by the forelock. When you see opportunity, you grab it. So it's, for example, it's a ripe moment, right? So when a rose is about to burst, when an opportunity comes by, that you recognize it and you grab it. That is very much the entrepreneurial life, actually, going out for opportunities. Can also be very tiring when you think everything is an opportunity. So you need to know exactly who you do it for and why. So now, question to you. As you are transitioning into entrepreneurship or considering entrepreneurship, what will be your biggest challenge and what will be the easiest part when it comes to the entrepreneurial logic? I'll go back. So is that creation, right? Figuring every step out yourself, the learning, being agile and humble enough to learn because the truth is on the streets. Proposition, really understanding the needs and priorities of your customer. Problem clarity has to do with the same. Agency, it's all up to you and overcoming those valid excuses to quit. And opportunity, being tuned into what is happening and recognizing opportunities which actually could be game changers for your venture. So let's take a moment, you just write it down. You can also share it, but you don't have to. But it's good to realize how you actually tick and where you are in these two worlds. See some people put it in the chat. Yeah, I'll just scroll up. Opportunity is difficult. Proposition. Does anybody want to talk to it? Anything that's coming up?
Yeah, sure. This is Rajesh here. So in terms of my entrepreneurial journey, the creation that's been done, learning is ongoing. I think the problem is more on the opportunity itself, as in the last mile, finding the customer with the requirement than anything else. So that's how I would frame my problem statement around opportunity.
So finding the problem with the customer.
No, finding the customer with the problem.
Okay, fine. Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah. If you don't find the customer and the problem they have, it's you will waste time and money. Yeah, very good. Well, it's great that you know already that this is hard. I know that
Yeah.
many people, also people who also pitch to us at Epic Angels for funding. You can't believe how many pitch decks I see that actually do not have a problem. And when you ask them, what problem are you solving? They actually don't know, right? It's based on, I think this is a good idea, based on assumptions. So I love it that you say this. Yeah. Anything else?
Sure.
Wants to share anything? Otherwise, we move on. You don't have to.
One thing that is coming to
Yeah.
mind for me is, in fact, building on what the previous speaker said. Like, for example, coming from a product management background, right? I like to think of it as first finding the customer I want to serve and then talking to them to find out what is the problem which is most meaningful for them and something
Yes.
they would be willing to spend money for.
Yes. That's exactly it. Yeah. And you say you come from a product management background, so that customer contact is maybe was always one step away, and now you need to go out there and find that.
Right. I tend to think of this as starting with the customer first in terms of who is it that I want to serve. And I may have ideas on what problems they might have, but they will certainly know, even though they might not be able to clearly describe where they're spending their money and their time. So that tends to be how I go about both in the product management world and now in my journey as a solopreneur. Decide on the customer first and then talk to them to find out what problems they would be
Yeah.
happy to
Yeah.
partner with and solve.
Yes. It's in fact the third ingredient of how to start successful. So you got a very good point. One thing, and then we move on. I see a question in the chat. Agency, please delve a little deeper, a bit more. So permission versus agency. Permission is doing good according to the standards, right? So the definition of success, I suppose that is it. So what is the definition of success? According to our old social contract, that the definition of success in school is to get high grades, and everybody is graded according to the same system. Definition of success is getting a job as a banker, a doctor, an accountant, you name it, buying a house when you're early 30s and then retiring in your early 60s, right? That is the definition of success in the corporate logic. Whereas in entrepreneurial logic, you define your definition of success. What is success to you? So where you can say, for me, it's successful if I let my internal values come up and I really listen to what is knocking inside to becoming who I actually am, regardless of what society defines as success. So it's really from that inside, right? So it's all up to you. And that can be hard. But also there, when you're a little bit more mature, that probably helps. So it's really, what is your definition of success? Good. Let's move on.
Sorry, there's a question in the chat.
Yeah.
It's Pradeep asks, how do you get that connector prospect to want to talk to you?
Yeah, it is. Okay, let's talk about that because that's exactly the topic that we're getting into now. Customer clarity, right? So know who you are serving, their problems and their needs, and how can you create value for this group. So let's dive in and then we go in. So your customer is your person, right? Who do you do it for? Maybe you already know who you would like to serve when you start something of your own. It is helpful when it is somebody or a group that you care about, that they do well. I have worked for groups of people that I actually don't care about if they do well. For a while that works. Also, if the money is good, that works. But if it's not sustainable, because when you really dig deep into what their problems and their needs are, it is in your head, right? So you go to bed with it and you wake up with it, and you know when you're taking a walk or have a quiet moment, like this is actually what will help them. When you don't care about the people, those moments of clarity will likely not come. So ideally, also given that you all live longer, healthier, that you will do this for another 20, 30 years, hopefully, better spend it for people that you actually care about. And that's part of that freedom that comes with entrepreneurship. Can you solve a problem for them? With your experience and your expertise, can you solve a problem for them? And will they pay for it? In short, right? Is there a need and is there demand? There can be a need, but no demand yet, which is fine. Can be a need that becomes demand later on. But they need to pay for it, right? Otherwise it's a hobby, which is fair enough. But I assume you're all here to set up a commercially viable business. So think about these three things. Who do you care about? Can you solve a problem for them with everything that you know? And is there actually demand? Can you make money from this? Important to keep in mind, your smallest viable audience needs to be specific, right? So you need to be able to almost recognize them on the street. And the market must be large enough to build a business around. So if you build, for example, for for a very specific group of people in a very small country, then it's unlikely that the market is big enough to really reach them. So describe your person and their problem, right? So who is your ideal customer? Describe them in one sentence. So put it down. So have your pen and paper. Be specific, right? So corporate leaders is not specific. You can't recognize them on the street. So be more specific. So let's say corporate leaders who are in the first 2 years of leadership and who have gotten there because they're technically very good, but actually have no idea how to manage a team. Okay, then you start to understand where they are. And what is their problem? Do you know their problem? And can you help? If you can't answer this, then there's a bit more digging to do, right? So start with the problem of the people that you care about and dig deeper. Go into the problem, read about it, learn what's actually going on. There's always problems that people are happy to talk about. Entrepreneurship, for example, entrepreneurs never have holidays. If I go into a room and say to 100 people who are in entrepreneurship, so isn't it hard? You never have holidays. And they will all say, yeah, that's actually true. But if I start a travel agency for entrepreneurs, I will not be very successful. Right? So I have to dig deeper. Why are there never holidays? Because many entrepreneurs are actually not so good at planning. Right? They kind of scramble day by day. Whereas if they could plan for the next 3 years, they can work backwards and say, okay, then is when I need to hire somebody, ideally in the ideal scenario, which it means that then I can go on holiday. So when I help them say, shall we draft some exit scenarios for you? That actually helps. And they will go on a holiday. But when I go into the room and say, you're terrible planners, all of you, aren't you? None of the 100 will actually like me, right? So you need to also build that rapport.
Yeah.
Where to find them has to do with this, right? So what do we need to be for a person? You can put it in the chat. We need to be relevant, unique, smarter, or all the above. There's probably more answers possible, but one you can never go without. Which one must you always be? One, four. Yeah, I see a lot of relevant. Exactly. Relevant. That is my personal take, also from what I have seen work. If you're not relevant to the person, they will never buy you, right? You do not have to be unique. There may be a similar solution for that problem out there, but if you are relevant to them now, then they're gonna buy you. Not saying that unique and smart and well, smart, that's not necessarily true, but you cannot do business if you're not relevant. How can you be relevant to your customer? You need to be close to them, right? Proximity is a thing. If you want to be relevant, you need to be close to them in what they do, in where they are online and in person. Go to them, understand the words that they say, understand what they have been going through, so you can really have that conversation. And then how to go out to them, right? So I have some tools also for how to speak with your customer and things that you can ask also when you're still exploring an idea, right? Doing that research and talking to your ideal customer is very much part of it, right? Something you must do. So I always say talk to 3 every week. And it doesn't have to be formal sit downs. You can just have a coffee, or as you're speaking with somebody, you can pop a few questions. So happy to share that resource as well. Good, let's move on. Positioning, selling yourself, right? That's a special thing. So become confident and smooth in conveying the value that you have to offer, right? That is what it's all about. You are creating value, and that value is actually valuable because it connects with that problem on a deeper level that your customer feels. But how do you talk about this? That's a whole art in itself, and this session is too short to go in there, but that's part of the other programs. What you can do now is very much, it's partly mindset, right? So when you go out and sell your own thing, and some of you are already in business and even have like revenue generating businesses, you might recognize that when you go out with your own thing, sometimes you feel very small. You're like, I just don't, I don't feel it today. I'm kind of meaningless, right? So it's a feeling that you can have on a day. On other days, you feel big. You feel expanded and you feel I can do this. And that's a pendulum, right? It also has a lot to do with imposter syndromes, like who do I think I am that I can do this? And then self-talk is very important. Yeah? And one of these self-talk things that is typically helpful as expressing yourself, right, is never self-indulgent if it is in service to others. So if you know what you do is in service to others, it is okay to talk about what you do. Okay? If you are that ladder that helps your customer hit that goal, hit that target, then please bring the ladder. Please talk about the ladder and how I climb it. Yeah, so that's maybe a helpful reframe when you go out and you feel like, I feel very icky right now and I feel I have to sell. Think that you are in service to others because you're actually solving their problem. What you can do already without feeling any ickiness and going out for hard selling, which actually is very hard these days with AI because AI is everywhere and doing cold outreach. Make it human, right? So shape the conversations and connect. So whatever your topic is, whatever you are building, start to shape the conversations. So if we have these 3 fields, right? So shaping conversations, cultivating connections, and advancing opportunities. So advancing opportunities is basically closing the sale, right? So it is these 3 that is a constant movement from left to right. So shaping conversations is creating and contributing. So for example, if you're on LinkedIn, you can create articles that are very valuable and interesting to your target group, to your ideal customer, because you talk about problems that they recognize, you talk about interests, like, oh, the other day I was at a conference and I learned this and that. Or help, right? How to, you probably know them, like 5 ways how to do this. That is actually contributing, right? And you're shaping conversations. People hear you, they read you, you get conversations based on what you share. That then leads to connection, right? So cultivating those connections. And then at the end, but that is for later when you're really bringing your idea to market. Maybe some of you are already there, right? But is the conversion, right? So how does it then convert? But it's a bit like a farm field, right? So you have to constantly go from left to right. So seeding on the left-hand side, shaping the conversations, and then closing the deal, yielding, right? So seeding, yielding. Building up your pipeline is with seeding. Yielding is doing the sales. And you need both, right, to keep it in balance. And there's a delay. If you seed, the plant will not immediately grow, right? 6 months later, somebody will come, oh, I actually read your things, and now I need what you have to offer, and you have never heard of this person, right? That happens. But if you are disciplined about this infinity loop, basically on your farm field, selling will become a lot easier because you will just have conversations that click with people, and selling becomes very natural. Yeah, so see this as driving your farm field, left to right, left to right. So what you can do is craft your messaging strategy. So what can you write about? What can you contribute, right? That earns connection. So not attention, I was on stage here and there, blah, blah, blah. People don't like to read that, but more, what is something of interest that I can share? What is something I know that is actually valuable for my target customer? And then what will move us closer to solving something that matters, right? So that's making that connection and then going into conversion. So you can take a screenshot, or you will also get the recording of this, but you can think about it this way. It will avoid having to go out for cold sales and shaping conversations and building the people that you talk to, right? As you are creating that need and demand, and people will find you and find you relevant. Next one, connection. We're nearly there. Finding people in the same mind space to learn, vent, celebrate, work with. That loneliness, as I said, is real, right? So find the people that you click with. So connection is all about similarity, right? In this group alone, there is many different people there. So similarity breeds connection. It's just a bias. That's how we work. Connection builds trust, and trust inspires courage. If we don't have that connection, it is very hard to actually do things that are courageous, like entrepreneurship. So my point is, find your tribe, right? So who is your tribe? Do you know who they are? Hang out with them, because they will be able to help you. If you are starting on this journey, finding people who are in the same mind space, right, in the same boat, that definitely helps. They don't need to be your best friends, as long as they understand that if you had a bad day, why you had a bad day. Yeah, it's not necessarily people who are your family or friends, but understand what you're going through. Build a network, very important. Make friends before you need them. So when we talk about this curve, right, going from stagnant to that freedom and fulfillment, it starts with curiosity. And at the end, right, the final barrier is that courage to actually do it. But the thing that makes it possible is connection, right? Is human connection. Without peers and without role models, it is very unlikely that you will meet, that you'll find that moment of courage. So that's the break point, and that's why connection is so important. Structure, right? Find a structure, adopt the systems and tools that work for you, design repeatable processes. So it starts with the 3 C's, the structure for your cash, right? Your financials, your contacts, and your calendar. Super important. So your cash, your financials, know your key metrics that matter, and put them in a model. Have your governance in order. Your contacts, do you have a list of the people? As you're networking, where do you find them? Do you have their details somewhere? You know, if you want to reach out for an event that's maybe interesting for them, how do you find them? So it can be in Excel, can be Airtable, can be MailChimp, can be HubSpot. It doesn't matter, as long as you keep your contacts in a structure. And your calendar, right? So schedule your time around energy and not your availability. Processes, make it all work. Design processes that are repeatable, makes everything lighter. And yourself, some of you already said, okay, it's hard work, entrepreneurship, that's true, but do not compromise on exercise or sleep or social contacts. That's easier said than done. Also for myself, I have that every day, that I'm like, oh, I can get this done. And that would mean I would sacrifice exercise, for example, or sleep. So it's important to keep that in mind, because it's a long-term game, right? So let's assume that you're going to be in this for 10 years or longer. It's not a sprint. So structure for your processes and systems and self will be the silent motor behind your success. Yeah. Just going to pause quickly for any questions, anything that comes up. All right. Let me share with you my my oopsies and ouchies. As I mentioned, it is always good to learn from what others did wrong. I did quite a few things wrong, cost me a lot of time and money. So first of all, starting big. When I set up my first company in Germany, I listened to the wrong people, and they said, oh yes, let's set up a GmbH. Maybe some of you know what it is, but it's basically the largest legal form that there is. Whereas I already knew that we would be leaving to Singapore. So, and that still is haunting me. The admin of Germany is terrible. All the taxes that they have and all the letters that they send. So start small with everything that you do. Start small. Also, when you are getting people into your team, start with people. Just, run a project. It might feel like a honeymoon phase, like, oh, finally we found each other. But then after 3 months, you find out that actually how this person communicates with people that are important to the business, for example, with partners, is not exactly as you would like to have it, or they don't answer or whatever, right? So things can come up typically around 3 months. So with everything that you do, start small. Also in how you set up your business, try it out first. You don't have to incorporate, from the start. Only when there's contracts and money, that's when you incorporate them. Overestimating skills. I think I already said it, right? So like, oh, I've made it this far in corporate, so entrepreneurship I can do. Be humble and learn. That is the way to go about it. There's a lot to learn on the path, and sometimes you're wrong. And the trick is to see it as a win, even when you're wrong, because you learned something. But really take a step back and be humble and open and receptive enough to learn. Thinking I matter, again, based on a past corporate career, is no guarantee for the future. Like investing, really, they're not listening, they don't care, and you don't matter. Spending on logo, website, and services, right? Free tools are everywhere. If you build a website, just go to any tool out there. It works really well thanks to AI, right? You can do a lot. Your cash and your time is finite, and try to not spend any of the too much. And then managing on task, that's something that I also did. So when I hired people first, I was like, okay, this is what needs to be done, like a typical waterfall planning. And it just burned them out because there's always so much to do. So what helps and what I've learned is to manage people on mission, right? So that they're not mercenaries, but that they're missionaries, so that they really buy in on the vision and the mission, and therefore sometimes also the compromises, because in the beginning you may not have so much salary to pay, for example, right? But at least if they believe in what they do, they will stick with you. So really bring them along on what you see in your vision. So I hope this helps. A few things also went well, which I would recommend. Get real about finances, right? So 12-month buffer to allow for intentionality. So be real. You're probably, if you just start out, I love working with entrepreneurs because they are so positive. That also sometimes means that people think, oh, this is going to generate revenue in 6 months, and then find out that actually you still need to find the market for a little bit longer. So having a buffer for at least 12 months is a good idea. It also helps to not make scrappy decisions like, oh, I'll do it this way because I want to have revenue. To really go level deeper, make sure that you make the right choices. Move around and meet people. I've always built networks, which what that does is help serendipity. And maybe for the experienced entrepreneurs under you, you will know that serendipity actually is a thing. For me, for example, is I went to a conference in Germany. So I was going to go to friends in Switzerland. I decided to not go because I'd been traveling already, and in the neighborhood was a conference about women in IT, and I just gotten the rights to bring this school 42, which is a coding school, to Germany. So I was like, okay, let's go there, and let's see. So I went there. At that conference, there was an opportunity to talk about, so there was a Q&A that took very long, and then the moderator asked, so all women in IT, they typically don't take a straight path, but a little bit of a detour. So tell me about how you ended up in IT. So I thought, this is my opportunity, right? It was 10 days before that I had gotten the rights to bring this concept to Germany. And I thought, okay, this is my chance. So I grabbed the mic, or I asked for the mic, and I said, well, this is 42. That's the concept. 10 days ago, I got the rights. I need sponsors and I need a team. And then from that, there were people after the session who came to me. So from the people who came to me after that session, I had my team, which was a team of volunteers. And then we found the funds to bring these schools to life. So that is kind of serendipity. If you move around, these things happen. If I had not gone to that conference, I don't know if these schools would have become reality today. And as I said earlier, make friends before you need them, right? I should say before you need them, right? If you go out for funding, for example, and you have no relationships, then it's going to be very hard. And learn fast, right? Stay up to date and be ready to share generously. Have something to say, especially also when you move around. If you have something interesting to say, it's easier to have a conversation. You can be interested as well, and you have something to share. Everything that you learn and that you know, again, you share it, you shape the conversations. So learn fast, know what's going on, hear from people around you, and read a lot, podcasts, things like that. So these are a few things that definitely helped me in my entrepreneurial journey at the start. For now, what you can do today is a few things. Check your runway, right? So if you are considering entrepreneurship, can you survive for 12 months with no revenue coming in yet? If the answer is no, it doesn't mean you can't do it, but it will limit you, right? You will have to go faster or find ways to survive if no revenues come in for longer than expected. Second, choose your path, right? So small business franchise or the search fund, solopreneur practice, or maybe a startup, right? Understand your own risk appetite. You can do that test that's in your email, and your energy levels also have to do with it. Do you know which path will suit you best? Test your idea, right? If you already have an idea, have conversations, right? Start with 10 people, have conversations and talk about it. Talk about the problem. So what do you do currently to solve this problem? If they don't spend any money on it, that's a sign, right? So maybe the problem is actually not big enough. If they do spend money on it, so what do you actually do to mitigate this problem? Contribute, right? As I said, create and contribute. Create content, start shaping conversations around your topic. Post on LinkedIn, speak in public, and close for contacts, right? So you're not closing for money, you're not selling, but you're creating contacts. You're expanding your network. Connect. Find 3 peers who are in the same mind space as you, right? So are in the same stage, and it's good to connect, right? So to really make sure you don't get that loneliness over you. So what are they doing? You don't need to become best friends as long as you understand each other and can go to each other to say, I want that contract that I've been working on for 3 months, or that contract that I've been working on for 3 months fell through. You know, your brother or your sister would say, I'm very sorry. And you're like, no, you don't understand. That person will understand, right? So that's why it's important. And also, as I said, move around, right? Move around, make connections. That is how luck and serendipity happens. And tell people what you do, right? You get feedback. You see how people react. Check your calendar. Last one, really, are you working on the right things? A common pattern actually amongst entrepreneurs, regardless the path they're on, is that the goal is very high, but the sense of achievement, their orientation for achieving things is actually quite low. So they have an idea and they have goals and they have objectives, but they get nothing done. And that can have different reasons. But one that I see often is that people just kind of move things out because there's no structure, right? There's entrepreneurship, there's no boundaries and no limits. So if you don't do it today, then you do it tomorrow. There's no boss who's going to tell you off. So you need to have that discipline and also be fair to yourself. Be honest to yourself. Am I working on the right things? Or am I just solving little things? Am I cleaning the kitchen, whereas I have to send a proposal out? Otherwise, no business is going to come in. So starting up really requires action. So entrepreneurship is the most practical form of self-actualization for people with experience. And it lets you turn decades of knowledge into something that is truly yours. And I think that is the beautiful thing about it. So the right time to start is when you decide to act, right? Just do it is what I would say. If you're thinking about just do it, don't think too long, don't write business plans, just do it. Remember, the truth is on the street, talk to the people, and that is how you learn. Understand what they're talking about, get their language, put it all in a place so you can learn, and you can learn fast. Start small, but you know that you are skilled enough to do this. How to take the next step? This is that pathway that I mentioned a little bit earlier. That's explore. That's where it starts. That was today. So that you have already completed. And then after that is shape, build, and accelerate. So here's a little bit more information if you're interested to take to take it one step deeper and deepen out these concepts that we have talked about, right? So Shape is the first step, which is 5 masterclasses of 90 minutes for first-time entrepreneurs, right? Looking for clarity and confidence, testing ideas and validating direction. So we very much go into these topics and actually how you do it. So what you will end up with is a validated idea, concept, and knowing if this is something to pursue. So this is not about speed, right? So the Shape is not about speed. It's all about confidence and clarity. Then Build, that is an accelerator, 12 weeks. So that is when you have that solid idea and you're ready actually to execute it, right? To make it launch ready. A launch ready venture is the goal of these 12 weeks. We will work with a validated methodology, right? Mentorship, also partners. There's a peer cohort to have that connection and to support each other and to build together with, and lots and lots of practical tools and templates. Once completed, you get a certification as well. And then Accelerate is based on the people who do Build, get an invite for Accelerate if it's relevant for people who are really ready to scale and go a bit faster with warm introductions to partners, investors, talent, etc. So that's more personalized support. If you're interested, Wisdom Circle is offering this, right? So to sign up and find more info, you can scan the QR code here. Currently 15% discount for early bird for Wisdom Circle members. If you're here and you're not a Wisdom Circle member, here's the page that you will get onto. And there where the red circle is, there you can sign up for Wisdom Circle, which is for free. And you get to enjoy the discount as well.